are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Doing Business with ODOT Real Estate Opportunities and Requirements webinar. My name is Paula Hyman from the Ohio LTAP Center. Before we begin today, just wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. If you have questions today throughout this presentation, I ask that you please place them into the questions pod. If everyone can, I have some instructions there on the screen for you. Go ahead and locate your questions pod, type in a quick hello, hi, just to make sure that you know where that is located and how it works. Also today, you will notice in the handout section that the presentations from today are available for download from there, as well as a contact sheet. If for any reason you are unable to download those handouts, put your email address in the questions box and I will email it to you directly. I would like to thank you in advance for your participation. We are attempting to record this session, and as long as the recording is successful, we will email the attendees the link to this following today's presentation. So I'm going to pass things off to Ms. Lynn Stevens, Central and Southeast Ohio Regional Outreach Manager with ODOT. Lynn? And Lynn, you are on mute.
Okay, Regional Outreach Manager with the Ohio Department of Transportation. Very happy to have you join us today so that we can share information regarding our opportunities for real estate. And with that, we'll go ahead, proceed. Okay, today's agenda is to provide real estate. My name is Lynn Stevens, doing an introduction of ODI. Then we will hear from Matt repairing our state's infrastructure system, including our highways, our bridges, our culverts, anything related to our highway system. ODOT's responsible for maintaining that. ODOT's mission is to provide easy movement of people and goods from place to place. To do that, we will take care of what we have, make our system work better, improve safety, enhance capacity. Again, I'm with the ODOT Division of Opportunity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Regional Outreach Manager. And here's a flow chart of how our division is divided up. We have Lauren Purdy, who's our Deputy Director, and she's been our first Deputy Director since we were established in 2016. And under Lauren Purdy, we have 4 offices: the Office of Access and Equity, led by Kim Watson. They handle Title VI civil rights issues related to highway systems and infrastructure requirements on federally funded projects. And they also are in charge of ADA issues. And we have the Office of Business and Economic Opportunity, led by Deborah Green. And they handle the DBE and SBE certification, the program reporting for the DBE program, as well as the goal setting and attainment for projects that have DBE and EDGE goals. That office also handles our supportive services funding, which is available to DBE certified companies each year. And we have on the job training program under our Office of Business and Economic Opportunity. Our third office is our Office of Civil Rights Compliance, led by Katie LaPlace, and they handles all things related to compliance on ODOT projects by contractors, primes, and subs. And then Office of Outreach, led by Deborah Green in our interim. And that's where I'm housed, as well as my 2 colleagues, Julita Stoltz and Lisa. We're all outreach managers, and we are liaisons for businesses who are doing business or interested in doing business. We hold events, webinars like today, educational workshops. I meet with businesses one-on-one, and just are a liaison for businesses. And contact us and we'll get you in the right place if we aren't the person who handles that issue. Anything related to doing business with ODOT, feel free to reach out to us. And here's a map of us, and Lisa Washington handles the Northwest Ohio area, Toledo area, Toledo Stoltz, Southwest Ohio area, which includes Cincinnati, and I am Central Ohio, and in the meantime, Northeast Ohio as well, until we fill that vacancy. So if you're in any of these areas, just reach out to us and we'll be happy to help you in any way we can. And with that quick overview, we will go on to the next portion of our agenda, which is hearing from our Office of Real Estate. And I'll just do a brief introduction of each presenter. Matt Kaskoris has been with ODOT since 2003. Over the past 17 years, he's served in various roles in the Office of Real Estate. In his current position, he handles real estate contracting, records retention, project tracking system, reporting, training, and prior to ODOT, he had received his BS degree from Ohio State University, and he is a certified general real estate practitioner, a real estate appraiser. He received that license in 2009, and is also a certified public manager as of 2016. Our second presenter, Brett Shearer, has been with ODOT since 1989. He began his career in District 3, working in roadway design, right-of-way, and survey, and has spent the past 25 years in the central office, working in various positions with the Office of Aerial Engineering, the Office of Production, and now the Office of Real Estate. In his current position, his responsibilities include right-of-way plan development manual, types of title manual, RX forms for legal descriptions, highway plan reading training, and he also does right-of-way pre-qualification training. Brett's a husband and father of 3 boys. He's a baseball coach, a CrossFit coach. He's very in shape, you guys, when you see him, if you know him, and vice president of the Bridge Credit Union and member of the Knights of Columbus. So with that, we'll turn it over to Matt and Brett. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. As Lynn said, I'm Matt Kaskoris, Administrative Section Manager in the Office of Real Estate. Happy to be presenting to you today, and I'm going to do the right-of-way acquisition portion and then turn it over to Brett, who will talk more on the plan side. So both two pretty distinct or different disciplines, but both housed within the Office of Real Estate, and both have individual unique pre-qualifications. So we thought if we're talking the Office of Real Estate, we'll give you kind of the full deal today. So if you're looking to do business with ODOT, it can be confusing to figure out where to start. I thought this graphic was pretty fitting, considering it is the Department of Transportation. So my goal today is just give you information on our contracting program. Hopefully it'll be a little less confusing and you'll know where to start if you are interested in doing this work, or I even see some familiar names on there. Maybe you'll pick up something too to help you in your business. And again, thanks to ODI for putting on this event and reaching out to us. So the objectives for in contracting, selection process, and then sort of the last part, how to actually do work for ODOT. and really starting at the beginning, which is becoming pre-qualified. So like everything we do, and so that's where our pre-qualification comes from, why we do that. We select the most qualified firm and then negotiate fees. So that's a little different. We don't just look for a low bid. If we've selected a firm and we can't reach some agreement on fees, we'll stop negotiations and then move on and negotiate with the next most qualified firm. But at the end of the day, we do pay fair and reasonable fees. And 552602 just talks about our authority for the director to enter into the contracts. So that's our legal authority and basis for what we do, not just because we want to do it. It's the law. Magnified ability to manage our periodic work overflow rate. Projects may get moved around, and having our staff and consultants on hand aid us in delivering the program. And ultimately, that's what we're doing. We're trying to ensure timely delivery of projects so they can get to construction and serve the people of Ohio. If you're not familiar with all over, we'll occasionally assist in some production work if it's needed, or you know, some kind of overflow where something needs done immediately and there's not staff to do it. But for the most part, we're the policy side. The overall program is really inherent in this 35% of environmental based on the way a project's authorized. So we're probably a little bit above the 2.26%, but the illustration is still we're not a huge part of the program. But as far as dollars go, so hopefully this clarifies it a little bit for you. You've got the Office of Consultant Services, which is central office. The Office of Real Estate, again, I'm also central office, and then our district real estate offices. And we all have a role in the process, and it may vary depending on contract type, which we'll talk a little bit about. But knowing who does what is really key. So what is the OX? Which means they'll put the department's consultant contract database. Procedures, they're all published through the Office of Consultant Services, and any of these documents, you can retrieve them on their website. So if you're not familiar or as a source of reference, I'd highly recommend getting familiar with their site. It comes up to our office for limit usage on the task and doing, so that's the reason for our database there. Then we really serve as the central point of contact for all right-of-way services. You know, if there's questions in a district, they tend to get funneled back through central office. And, you know, if I don't know the answer, or we need to do some research and poll the other districts, we'll do that. We also publish our scope of services and all our consultant forms. We maintain our ranges for fees. We say it's not a fee schedule. It's not, we're always going to pay this, but we've tried to give some guidance on what are fair and reasonable fees based on some complexities. So that document's got a low, medium, and high range, and then under each of those, a low fee for, you know, whatever unit we're talking about. You know, what is a medium fee? And document, again, it's maintained under consultant services, and that's available for your viewing if you go to their website. So that takes work completion. again, they're the district's responsibility to certify the right of way, which is why we're doing all of this, so the contract can be sold. They'll be the ones paying the invoices and completing consultant ratings. So if there are contracts they've done on their own, they'll rate those in conjunction with their contract officer. If they're the statewide task orders, I work with them, but solicit their feedback in order to rate the firms. Primary, will mention, there's a couple reasons for that, but primarily being you can get the best team. So you're going to know it's a big project. You're going to know your needs. Stuff's pretty well defined. We have one now that was on the last posting up in District 12. I think it's going to be 260 parcels over a couple years. So having a lot of negotiators, a lot of firepower on each team, probably very important to those guys. And so this will allow consultants to have the time to form the team that can best deliver the project. There are some challenges with this, and it's a timing issue. Our districts have to be very proactive. We have 3 scheduled postings per year, so January, May, and September, and it can take up to 6 months by the time district goes through the scoring and selection process to have a consultant under contract ready to begin work. But the main takeaway is they are the higher dollar contracts. You cannot perform appraisal review or relocation review on the same contract. That's true across the board. So when these are posted, we would also typically post a separate review contract. Definitely for appraisal, and then usually combine the relocation review on the appraisal one. Also, if there's relocation, which on a project that size, we would typically have some. But our fees are negotiated on a per task basis. We're a little bit different from the rest of engineering that allots a number of hours. We just go by per task. And these are just spending authority, so they're important when we go to the controlling board. Estimated what our need will be over that 2-year period, and we ask for the authority. But there's no guarantee of work for a firm that's selected for these, because it's really on an as-needed basis. So as a project comes up and district needs a consultant to do some work, they can contact one of the firms, negotiate fair and reasonable fees, and then authorize. So they don't have to go back through that potentially 6-month process to get a consultant out and working. And these are for, we call them turnkey right-of-way acquisition services. So we're not just asking for relocation or appraisal on these. The firms that are selected are able to provide all those different services. And if you're a smaller business, I guess this might be important to you, trying to get into this. If you have just one area of specialty, these are usually made up of their teams of people. It's not one firm has, you know, all the available staff to do everything. So, but the contracts are posted that way. But again, they're limited to projects less than $150,000 in right-of-way services. Same thing, fees negotiated on a per task basis. And that's just an 8%. So yeah, almost $500,000 in goals there. And we don't have a lot of DBE and edge firms in our right-of-way services field. So if you meet any of that criteria, I encourage you get certified, especially if you're interested in doing this kind of work, because those goals are out there. They're going to continue to be out there. The participation goals are primarily what we'll see on our task order agreements, and the department has been getting more aggressive with setting them. So I think a lot of opportunity does exist there. As far as the development goals, a little more complex. We've done it on the project specific contracts in the past, but basically there's an implementation plan. So there's an overall objective of assisting a DBE or EDGE firm who have been certified by the Ohio Department of Transportation, and they want to improve long-term development, increasing opportunities to participate in a variety of kinds of work, and handling increased significant projects and achieving eventual self-sufficiency is some of the language they use. And where we've seen it before are different plans. Say you're a title agent and you're interested in becoming pre-qualified for negotiation. Well, you're already pre-qualified in titles, so you can provide some of that service already, but the prime firm would then bring you on and help teach you, help you get experience, so you could ultimately become pre-qualified in negotiation. And that's just one example. It can be, it could be a lot of different things. You may not have any pre-qualification, but there's a plan to develop you and help you achieve that. And so that's the difference from a participation goal to a development goal. If you're not familiar, I know ODI does a lot of different seminars on DB and EDGE programs. Again, DB's the Ohio Department of Transportation, and EDGE is actually administered by the Department of Administrative Services. So if you're not familiar with that, I'm sure Lynn, get in touch with Lynn. She can get you a bunch more information there. But there is a committee that meets and regularly sets those goals on all the department's contracts. It's not just real estate, it's across the board. So how do we actually select? There's an initial consultant services evaluation. So after we've posted and the postings come down, we've got our replies. Where they'll look at the general letter of interest requirements, any current negligence issues that you may have, or performance issues identified through our CES system. And they would weed out any of those. If there was any of those problems, you wouldn't make the short list, but no issues there. Then we go on to what's called a short list. There's an edit, so it's central office if it's a task order, or the district real estate offices if it was a project specific. But if somebody is eliminated, we will provide some written documentation concerning the specific reasons why. We try to be very transparent in everything we do when it comes to consultant selection. So we put that out there, and you'll be able to see what the notes were and the reasons why. In this case, that somebody wasn't sure. Then when we move, and then at the end of the day, we're selecting the firm that's the most qualified to perform the service, based on tallying up those points from each category there. So we firm agreement on fair and reasonable fees. Again, I just want to reiterate, it's not just a schedule, it's guidance. So We haven't accounted for every scenario in there. It sets a range, and there are many times we may be below or above the range. And when we're outside of that, we ask for some written documentation as to why. What's unique about whatever unit of work you're doing, and why is it, above the high end of the range? And that's okay. That's okay. We need to have it documented, and as long as everybody agrees, then we can move forward. So then moving on, written authorization to proceed. Before any work can begin, written authorization from ODOT is required. We have to make sure funds are encumbered. It's like writing your own check or buying something you otherwise might be in trouble, right? So, and we put the same responsibility on the consultant. So any work performed by a consultant prior to receiving written authorization, it's done solely at their own risk. So you may not get paid. I know I don't want to be working and not get paid. So make sure you are over the years. So just always make sure that authorization is in place, because things can happen. Somebody at ODOT may tell you, yeah, we're getting that. And things change last minute and the money may not be there. So always have written authorization to protect yourself. And then on the ODOT side, authorizes a section and yeah, I think that's just a best practice. We're looking, for feedback and I think vice versa, and always trying to get better. And the ratings are used in future selection. So you saw that was a category that we score on. So they are important. They're nothing to, not think about or take important. And we've worked pretty hard over the last couple years trying to standardize some of the ratings. I know the Office of Consultant Services has done some training and even published, I believe it's a section of the manual now, where they've offered guidance and tried to standardize, what is a 7 or an 8, because that wasn't always perceived the same across 12 districts. And I guess those of you that have done some of our work, or I guess anybody dealing with different people, you have, different interpretations, different personalities, and it's hard, I know, to get it totally standardized, but they've really made an effort to try to define what exactly those various ratings mean, and go towards that one ODOT and being as consistent as we can be. It's the last part, how to do this of pre-qualification. Each has unique requirements. There's a 2-year cycle. So once you become pre-qualified in any of the disciplines, you're on for 2 years, and then everybody's thrown off the list at the end of that 2 years. And you're notified of it, but you must respond to stay on the list. You don't have to prove or do any additional work. But if we don't hear from you, you're going to be removed from the list. 2020 is a renewal year, so this December, I guess if you have pre-qualifications now and you haven't been notified, you likely will here in the near future, but respond to that so you can stay on the list and continue doing work. I looked, I want to say last week, and we have just under 400 people pre-qualified in some discipline for right-of-way services at the department. Here's what our CAP will then do, be considered an appraisal, but it is establishing a value. If we can't use that format, that simplistic format, we would do a regular appraisal, which has separate qualifications. We then review every appraisal. So that's a separate category. After we have both relocation and relocation review, pre-qualification cap. This in our pre-qualification requirements manual. Again, that's housed under the Office of Consultant Services website, and it's a whole manual right away towards the end. And it outlines everything you need to do, cover letter, what you're seeking pre-qualification in, and then you're going to want to demonstrate how you have that experience. So basically submitting your resume, and I tell people be as detailed as possible when our office is looking at these, even references you list. We're typically, if we don't know you and know you've, some of the work you may have done as a trainee, then we're probably checking those references. Especially we get, even people that have done work out of state. But you want to be as detailed as possible. And again, you're selling yourself, letting us know how you are qualified to do this work. Project manager must have a thorough working knowledge of 23 and 49 CFR, along with the uniform relocation assistance, real right-of-way acquisition, because that's what you ultimately are. Complex projects that involve multiple complicated tasks. Experience as a supervisor and manager of a job involving workload identification, assignment of tasks, scheduling performance and monitoring progress of multiple and/or complex real estate parcels. And this one's, the last one's about on all of our pre-qualification categories, is the ability to read, interpret, and explain complex highway, right-of-way, and construction plans. I'll give a plug here to Brett before he gets on, but he does a great job teaching those courses, and he's got a lot of years in already, but that's really where it starts. It's the basis to everything we do. You have to know the plans, to even know what you're looking at before you can do anything else. So if you're thinking about getting into this and wanting to take a class, that's where you have to start. That's where the basis for all we do. Familiar with, and you have to have, if somebody becoming title pre-qual, to do stuff in person, and then finally do a demonstration report. So that's for titles. Value and basic appraisal procedures, ODOT 2, appraisal 105. So it looks like 4 courses required right now, and we've got the disclaimer in there. We may also give consideration to individuals who have prepared similar formats in other states, so long as documentation and references are provided which prove the individual's ability. That's what I talked about earlier. There's quite a few instances where the way this is laid out, you may have some equivalent experience, and if you're submitting, just be sure to demonstrate what that is, and reply from us explaining why, and some some action plan on ways that you could then become able to meet those requirements. The states primarily what we're looking at, 5 years of experience, I guess, unique in the appraisal world, and the issues our appraisers need to be aware of. So we don't want, you really can't just walk in off the street and be a reviewer. You need to go through the trenches, write the appraisals to gain that competence to be a reviewer. And we talk about understanding of ODOT's policy and procedures, USPAP again, and the plans. To negotiate different parts of the taking to the resume requirements, and we recognize that one being it's a year, maybe a little bit difficult to get. A few years back, we enacted an actual pay item on our contracts that we have the option to utilize, where we can give some money to a negotiation trainee, as long as they're out with the person that's pre-qualified doing all the work. They're also signing off on the negotiator notes and present at all those points of contact, because it can be a difficult one to get into just coming straight off the street. It's not a, there's no separate licensure required for it. For closings, then, an applicant shall have at least 1 year prior experience in closings and be familiar, again, with all real estate manual sections deal with closing and the acquisition of real property. And then we talk about our ODOT, that's RE real estate forms in 57. And to get here with both, because you may be hired to do either. Ability to interpret and explain the relocation assistance program, successful completion of ODOT's relocation training courses or equivalent. And again, we've got several relocation training courses. Right now, they're on hold because we aren't doing them in person, but we're in the process of getting all that stuff online. Prior relocation experience on highway projects is preferred. Senior folks that are experienced in the discipline completion, passing grade on all final exams of ODOT's relocation training courses. A lot of our meeting those courses is a must. So I guess this last part, just some tips, and hopefully what I've showed you today, you really need to learn our system, get familiar with our manual, sign up for our Design Reference Resource Center. So that's, you can put your email in and you'll get any updates. So anytime we change a policy, and even some announcements will come through that. Obtain any of our standard publications. Check our website frequently. We have announcements to stay abreast of our changes. Learn our project development process. So how does a project come about? Very important if you want to understand or market yourself in a way that you may provide value. Attend ODOT sponsored training courses. And as I mentioned, we are moving to an online approach. A lot of our classes we're breaking up into smaller modules. So they're all going to be housed through LTAP, and they're going to be shorter. There's no prerequisites, at least for the ones that we've got posted so far. So you can take them in any order and around your own schedule. But that's changing daily right now. We've been adding more and working with LTAP and our Office of Training to get more of them up. I mentioned earlier we have 20-some classes that we've historically held in person, and we are working to get them all online at this point. And I will say those are through, there's an e-learning site through when the department's needs. It's very important to develop team arrangements. I mentioned earlier, even on our task orders, right-of-way acquisition services for those. So a lot of firms, even if they have, a project manager on staff, may not have an appraiser. They may not have a relocation person or a title person. So you can be a sub-consultant to them. And yeah, it works both ways. They need you in order to bid on a contract to be able to provide the services we need. You may have that ability. So knowing who those firms are and developing those team arrangements will help you get work. And then finally, just monitoring the consultant services webpage on a weekly basis. That's where all the announcements are. Any postings on upcoming projects and just general consultant information can be found there. So that's all I've got for my portion of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Brett now.
All right, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Hopefully, audience view, cool. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Let me get everything running over here. Cool. First of all, I want to take an opportunity to thank Paula, who's doing all the hard lifting with setting this up and running stuff in the background, the recording. Also want to thank everybody from the Office of ODI for setting this up, and certainly Matt for doing the hard work here in the beginning. He did a great job of presenting all the ins and outs of contracting, fee guidance, and just so many different nuances to what goes on with ODOT and the different disciplines and how to get pre-qualified, how we rate consultants. He did all that heavy lifting, so I don't have to do all that stuff. I've basically got to focus on how to get pre-qualified. He covered 9 disciplines. I'm going to cover 1. So that's why I thank Matt for all the work he did with this. I will say this: the discipline I'm going to cover is a little unique. It's not in the sense of it is certainly required in order to do work for ODOT, but this discipline, right-of-way plan development pre-qualification training, isn't necessarily a real estate professional discipline. It is really more of a surveyor / technician or engineering profession. So while it certainly is the groundwork and the foundation of what all the real estate disciplines do to complete their work, is not necessarily done by the real estate professionals. It's done more by the professional surveyors and the engineers and the engineering side of things. So with that, quickly, I'm not going to cover these slides. They're in there, the PDFs, a little bit about myself and my history with ODOT. But what I really want to do is want to jump into what are right-of-way plans. And I think this is very critical to understand that right-of-way plans provide the basic authorities for the purchase of land, and because it's not always about the physical acquisition, it can be about specific rights, egress, ingress rights, and I stress all physical items of value and the effects these acquisitions will have on a remaining residue, which is evaluated by the appraiser. But it's important for the surveyor and or the technician or engineer to make sure they're showing this stuff correctly on the plans, are included in the plans and allow accurate determination for FMVE and the compensation or the indebted to the owner. With that, I kind of think I'm going to take you guys back in a little bit of a story and think about the time that either you've built a house, purchased a house, or remodeled a house. Most of you should have worked with, if you're building one or remodeling one, you would have worked with an architect or an engineer, somebody to draw up the plans and then show you take your vision in your head and put it on a piece of paper so that you could see it before it was built. And with that, that's what our surveyors do is they take what is existing out there in the field, put it on a set of plans, and then the engineers, they will actually design what it is that we're going to build that's going to go across your property or the property owner's property. And I think this is critical for everybody to understand from the standpoint of when you purchased your house or built your house or remodeled your house, that was a choice that you made. That was something you wanted to do. In regard to what ODOT does, usually, most often, a property owner does not want this to happen to their property. So while we're creating a set of plans and we're going to show the property owner what we're doing, it's in a situation that they didn't necessarily want this. What we call unwilling, or they're being affected by our project unwillfully or unneeded in their mind. So it's very important that we pre-qualify consultants to prepare right-of-way plans so that they put together the best set of plans possible for the acquisition agent, for the appraisal process, and most importantly, going out to meet with the property owner and making sure that when a negotiator meets with them, that those plans reflect exactly what is out there in the field. Because if it doesn't, it ultimately is going to devalue our credit or negatively impact our negotiation from the start. Why would you trust somebody that doesn't have the most accurate set of plans? So when they come meet with the property owner at the kitchen table, or in today's world through Zoom or Skype or however it's being done through negotiation. So Right-of-way plans also serve as a reference for land professionals and an inventory of the department's land purchases. Some of you on this webinar may know this, many of you may not, but the reality of it is our right-of-way plans are historic. ODOT's purchases and the plans that we prepare for right-of-way plans are something that we've done back 30, 40, 50 years ago, and we still utilize those plans today. Unlike our construction plans, while we may use them, the old ones from 30, 40, 50 years ago, generally the engineers don't utilize those plans very often for future projects that come along and building them. They might reference back to them, but they're not being utilized in the sense of documenting what we purchased, the inventory of land that ODOT has, and the history of how that land was transferred from one property owner to the department or vice versa back. So it's very important that we're putting together accurate plans for that standpoint as well. Right-of-way plans are a visual representation of the property rights, and a professional surveyor, a licensed surveyor in the state of Ohio, is suited to identify and locate these rights. They also work with, back to Matt's presentation a little bit, our surveyors will work with the title agent as well, and may overlap in the research and what they find that's used for the plans. Protection of the property owner's rights and proper compensation for all affected rights is mandated by federal and state law. Surveyors are the eyes and the ears of the individuals that use right-of-way plans for proper property appraisal, negotiation, and acquisition. So kind of laying the groundwork for why we do pre-qualification, how important the right-of-way plans are to this overall process. So with that, I'm going to jump into our pre-qualification process. There are two distinct pre-qualification categories when it comes to right-of-way plan development. There's what's called limited and then complex. The limited was something that we developed probably about 8 years ago. Prior to that, complex was something we had been doing. Right-of-way plan development complex was something that had been from the time we started pre-qualification back in the late 90s. So we've been doing this right-of-way pre-qualification for plan development started actually 21 years ago, started back in 1998. And we've been putting on a pre-qualification training class every year for, and sometimes twice a year, for the past 20 years. This was the first year because of COVID. We had to cancel that class. It was being presented the day that Governor DeWine shut down everything across the state, so we had to cancel the class. It has not been rescheduled. Back to Matt's point earlier, I'm in the process of updating the right-of-way plan manual. We're going to be creating a new pre-qualification training course that will be online, will be in some sort of modules, maybe 8, 10, 12 parts. We're not sure yet how we're going to break it all down, but we hope our plan, or my plan, is to have it available next spring when we would traditionally be teaching the course. So the one thing I do want to mention with right-of-way pre-qualification is we pre-qualify the firms. All the other disciplines in real estate that Matt talked about is pre-qualifying the individuals. With right-of-way plan development, it is more on the side of the engineering disciplines where they pre-qualify firms, and I'll go over that in more detail in a minute, but I want to make sure everybody understands that there's a distinct difference between the real estate pre-qualification discipline as an individual versus right-of-way plan development, which is pre-qualifying a firm. Limited, the definition, basically what that means is it's going to be a project that is in a rural setting in most cases. I won't want to say in all, but in the majority of the projects would be in a rural setting, would have a maximum of 6 parcels or 6 ownerships involved, wouldn't have any railroad involvement, wouldn't have any limited access right away, and no complicated factors that require specific expertise. Ideally, what the whole limited was created for was more of our LPA program, and then our smaller ODOT projects, culvert replacement, bridge replacements, maybe a turn lane added at an intersection. One, it was to give smaller firms the ability or capability to get pre-qualified to do complex, but more importantly, a lot of the LPA program had smaller projects and were looking to use local firms, whether it be DBE or edge firms, to do these smaller projects. And this was, the limited was created, like I said, I think in 2011, 2012 opportunity. So the definition is projects that are located in typically rural areas or small towns with no more than 6 ownerships involved. It requires a minimum of 1 professional surveyor registered in the state of Ohio. So you must have on staff a full-time staff, as you see, must be permanent staff, 1 licensed surveyor. That is the only professional requirement. 1 individual. They must have completed the pre-qualification course. As I mentioned, we had to cancel this past year's course, but I do want to assure you I have, in the 20 years I looked it up, we have had over 1,200 people go through the pre-qualification training. Many of them have went through it twice. So there's a lot of people out there that have went through the course. We require that they take it at least once, and it's encouraged that they retake the course every 5 years, but there's no mandate or requirement that they retake it every 5 years. So there's a lot of people out there that have taken the course to date. This individual must have active involvement in the performance of boundary survey, preferably in the past 2 years is what we're looking for, 2 years prior to the date of the application. Really what we're making sure here is that they've actively been doing work in this industry recently, and not something they had done years ago and then came back to it. Obviously, it would prefer that it would be ODOT or LPA work. As a surveyor, you should have deed research and maps and records and plats. These are all pretty much preparation of descriptions and approved and recorded. Again, as a licensed surveyor, if you're active, these are all things you should naturally be doing on a daily or weekly basis. The submittal requirements, pretty basic. The design firm, again, would submit a resume, very similar to all the real estate disciplines, summarizing the boundary survey work experience and or road right-of-way experience they've done, submit county-approved legal descriptions. We'd like to see them obviously within the last 2 years that they've been recorded, and a copy of the certificate for completion of the right-of-way plan pre-qualification training course. It's a certificate we give out once they've attended the course and completed it. There's no test involved. It's just you have to attend the course and complete it, and you'll receive a certificate. So jumping on now to the complex side of right-of-way plan development. Again, I also say it's our traditional, it's the one we've had around for years. It requires 2 areas of discipline or responsibility. There's a designer and a reviewer, so there should be 2 people on the firm at a minimum. There can be more, certainly. We don't prohibit there from being more, but we require that there be 2. The designer must be under the supervision of a surveyor, registered surveyor in Ohio, obviously that being the reviewer. So the right-of-way plan reviewer is the one that must be a licensed surveyor in the state of Ohio. That individual is the one that's responsible for signing and sealing all the appropriate right-of-way documents. The right-of-way plan designer and right-of-way plan reviewer cannot be the same individual on any project. So a firm may have 2 individuals, might have 4. It doesn't matter the number that they have. Obviously, to be complex, you have to have a minimum of 2, but they both must be working on that project, or a combination of 2. You can't have one individual doing both the design and the review on the same project. The right-of-way designer can be a PS. So while I said that the reviewer must be, the designer does not have to be, but they can be. There's no restriction on that. So the designer can be a technician with years of experience. They could be a surveyor. They could be an engineer. ultimately somebody that demonstrates having right-of-way plan experience, have taken the course and in the resume supplied us with sample plans and some descriptions that maybe they've prepared, obviously not signed or sealed because they weren't licensed, but maybe they've done that under supervision of a licensed surveyor. So let's see, moving on, the right-of-way designer requirements and responsibilities, experience in projects comprising of a total of, I quote, a total of 10 or more parcels. And why I say comprising, it may be a combination of 2 or 3 projects that get you over that 10 parcels or 10 ownerships. It could be one project that they've worked on and had 30 or 40 parcels involved, but ultimately it must have at least 10. So when they submit their resume and their sample plans, the accumulation must be at least 10. Active involvement in right-of-way plan development within the past 5 years. Again, the whole point of this is just making sure they've been involved in our current policies and procedures, so that it hasn't been somebody that's been out of the line of work for a number of years. You might laugh at that, but it really had happened back in the beginning of our pre-qualification process. We had quite a few people applying for pre-qualification that hadn't done work for 10 or 15 years. So that's why that's in there. Successful completion of the course, courthouse research, experience and knowledge of ODOT right-of-way plan manual. I think Matt really covered that really well with the real estate disciplines, but it's no different here. You must be experienced and knowledgeable in the right-of-way plan manual, as well as ODOT's CAD and engineering standards, because all of our plans are built, was built using MicroStation and GeoPack. We are in the process of changing to Open Roads Designer. Ultimately, it's still all under the umbrella of the CAD standards, whether it even be AutoCAD for that matter. Ultimately, it's under the CAD standards, and you must be familiar and have experience and knowledge in that umbrella. Reviewer. So getting into the reviewer requirements, again, must be a licensed surveyor, have 2 years experience in developing public right-of-way plans. Here we want to see a combined total of 20 or more parcels. Again, it could be one large project, or it could be accumulation of 2 or 3 projects that get you over that 20 parcels. Active involvement in right-of-way plan development in the past 5 years, and again, of course, completion of the course. The reviewer requirements, responsibilities also is establishing and setting boundary monuments. So it's not just about our requirements. It's also, and I don't have this in my slides, but it's about the Ohio Revised Code for surveyors, making sure you're following the boundary requirements of the Ohio Revised Code, investigating and establishing property lines, checking and verifying accuracy and computation of legal descriptions. Ultimately, every licensed surveyor should know this. That's how they got their license. Their name, their license numbers on the line. The work must meet the minimum standards and ODOT's requirements for right-of-way plan development. Evaluate overall right-of-way plans and legal descriptions. It is, and I'll say this here, but I say it in my other classes that I teach, it's the reviewer's responsibility to make sure that they're checking the quality of their work to meet our requirements, as well as the consistency of the right-of-way plans matching the construction plans. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here real quick. The one thing, again, that's a little different, a lot of our larger projects, right-of-way plan projects, are done by a sub consultant, and the roadway engineering is done by the prime consultant, or it could be vice versa. But the bottom line is they're 2 different firms. One's doing the construction plans, one's doing the right-of-way plans in a lot of cases. And it's really the responsibility of the reviewer, the surveyor, on our right-of-way plans to make sure that the right-of-way plans are consistent with the construction plans. With all the information. So, and it's their responsibility to do the quality check. It is not ODOT's responsibility to do those things, although we obviously, our district real estate office has right-of-way reviewers and they review the plans, but in most cases, they're doing spot checks. They're not reviewing them in detail. And of course, their name, license, and career isn't on the line for those plans as the reviewers is. So can't stress that enough. Submittal requirements. Design firms must submit a resume for both the designer and the reviewer, summarizing their work, listing all the right-of-way projects, highlighting the direct responsibility, submitting an approved completed right-of-way plans. Again, if you need multiple sets of plans to make up that 10 parcel requirement or 20, you'll need to submit those. The poll, and then within the past 5 years, of course, or preferably, there could be nuances to that. If it's a large project that may be stretched over a period of 7 or 8 years, certainly that's going to be fine. So there are nuances to that 5-year requirement. When we say initial submittal, again, kind of going back to what Matt said with real estate professionals, every 2 years they kind of wipe the board clean. It's a very similar process with our engineering disciplines and our right-of-way pre-qualification. Every 2 years, the firm needs to resubmit, and Dan Krakovich sends out a letter to everybody letting them know, hey, you need to resubmit who's on your pre-qualification list for right-of-way plan development. And if it's the same individuals that have already been pre-qualified, you don't need to resubmit a full-blown resume with all the sample right-of-way plans and legal descriptions and things of that nature. That's what that initial submittal only means. If it's somebody new to your firm that's never been pre-qualified, well, then by all means you will have to submit as part of the resume sample plans and legal descriptions that have been signed and sealed by the surveyor. Design firm submitting resume, we've already went over that. Submit county approved legal descriptions and copy of the certificate. That's one of the things that a lot of times people have taken the course and they misplace the certificate for taking our class. For probably about the last 6 or 7 years, I have an electronic copy of everybody's certificate. I don't like to provide them, but certainly if somebody were to misplace them, I have them on file and can get you a copy of that. Right-of-way plan development includes the performance of, just kind of reviewing here and things to keep in mind. It's property rights research, it's practice of boundary surveying, it's topographic surveying, all those topo items out in the field. It's the computation of both existing and proposed road right-of-way, the preparation of right-of-way plans based on ODOT or similar standards, preparation of legal descriptions following both ODOT standards, county recording, and conveyance requirements. It's something I haven't really covered. I do cover in the pre-qualification class. It's one thing to prepare legal descriptions to meet ODOT's requirements, but it is an absolute must that you prepare legal descriptions to meet the county conveyance requirements or they won't record them. So that's on the consulting firm to make sure that the legal descriptions they prepare meet the county recording requirements. And then provide the districts when they submit for review the right-of-way plans, especially the final review, a closure report for each legal description. Submit your application and resume they would be submitted to Dan Krakovich with the Office of Consultant Services. I have down here at the bottom asterisk, plans can be quarter size or CD. It can be on a USB flash drive. And in today's world, I'm certain that Dan is even willing or able to take them electronic email submission, depending on the size, zip files, things of that nature. So just kind of reiterating that whole thing there. Getting pre-qualified. This is one of the biggest questions that I usually get after this presentation, but more importantly in my pre-qualification training classes. If I don't have ODOT right-of-way plan experience, I highly recommend you submit any road right-of-way plans prepared in the past 5 years, even if it was for a local. Submit any LPA roadway work. As I just mentioned, it doesn't have to be for ODOT. It could be a local project that maybe you've done. Any subdivision plats prepared in the past 5 years. Reason I say that is most often when you're doing, a surveyor does subdivision plats, there's dedicated right-of-way that has to be established as part of that subdivision plat. That is road right-of-way. It will involve utilities easements as well. And that leads me into the last one, which isn't on this slide. Again, if you don't have any experience with ODOT right-of-way, and oftentimes individuals don't, but you may have some work that you've done for a local water company, gas company, electric company. And the reason I state those is because oftentimes those are what's called strip takes, which is a lot of what we do. We take pieces, small pieces or chunks of property from property owners, and it requires a set of plans to do so for whether it's a utility company, a gas company, or a local water company. So Megan, those are some options if you don't have experience, ODOT experience. We'll take everything under consideration. Dan is the one that reviews these. He's a licensed engineer and surveyor. He reviews all the submittal requirements. On occasion, him and I do meet to go over maybe one that he's not comfortable with, and we'll discuss, but that's very rare. He usually is able to address that. Users of the right-of-way plans, I think this is a very important slide, especially in today's presentation, because we have so many different people on this that come from different backgrounds. These are all the different individuals that are going to touch the right-of-way plans at some point in time along their journey. And even after we've acquired them, will be used, whether it's in appropriation cases or in a future project that ODOT may have. And it goes back to what I said about in the very beginning of this presentation about how historic these right-of-way plans are, and that's why it's so important that we pre-qualify firms to do this work, to make sure it's done correctly, because it's not just about the project we're building today, it's about future projects and property owners that are involved along our corridors today and in the future. So I do have some poll questions, so I'm going to turn this over, Paula. So the poll question, projects with a maximum of 6 parcels is one of the definitions for limited right-of-way plan development. True or false? So I'll give you guys a few minutes to answer that on the polling.
In order to vote, please, if you were in full screen, hit the escape key and vote directly on the screen. And we have about 30% of the votes in.
All right.
Give them a few more seconds here. All right, another 5 seconds. We're at about 44% of the votes submitted.
All right. So we had, the majority had true, a few had false. The correct answer is true. And for those of you that weren't willing to participate, you have failed the class. I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. I gotta have a little bit of fun here. So I have one more polling question. For those of you that got it right, nice job. You were paying attention at the presentation. The next question and the last question is, limited right-of-way requires active involvement within 5 years prior to the application. True or false?
We're at about 37%.
All right. All righty. Ooh, quite a few had true and many had false. The correct answer, is false. It's limited right-of-way requires active involvement within 2 years prior to the application. A little bit of a trick question because there was a few things within my complex that had to do with 5 years, but limited right-of-way requires active involvement within 2 years prior to application. So the last thing I'm going to cover is highway plan reading training. Matt plugged it earlier. It is a course that I offer. I don't have a date at this point. We are going to be converting that to online as well. It is a 3-day course, traditionally a day and a half on construction plan reading and another day and a half that covers right-of-way plans. Sometime this fall, I will be converting that to an online class. So look for, again, something in the spring or sometime after the first of the year for that to be available through LTAP and other resources, I'm sure. But with that, that concludes my presentation for today. I don't know if we have any questions that Matt and I need to address. Paula?
We do not have any questions in the chat pod at this time. And if you all are finished, I just want to say a quick thank you to you all for presenting this information. Again, we will have resources on both sites. And just as soon as this presentation is concluded, we will do our best to get the recording live and posted and sent out to all participants today. So at this time, if you do have questions, go ahead and type those in the questions pod. We're not a large group, so you can unmute yourself and go ahead and speak and ask any questions you may have. But other than that, we'll just hang out here for a couple minutes and see if anything comes in. I don't see anything coming in. Just so you all know, you have contact information available in the handout section. So if you think of something after the session ends, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day.